Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to the Cosmic Connection. We're so happy that you're here. We are going to be going into the astrology for September. And I was telling Rick before we went live that I need him today. I don't just want his astrological guidance, I need it. And I don't know about all of you, but there's just these things that are happening that feel like we're moving in a direction that I'm not super excited about, but I know I can think about it differently. But some things happening that feel like they're harkening back to 2020, 2021, just when I kind of thought that we were beyond that. So, a lot of things obviously happening here on Maui, but that's my little sliver of the world. But I feel like there's some global things unfolding that it's like, oh, whoa, really? So can't wait to get there, Rick. Um, are you ready? Oh no, you're muted. You're muted. Why?
There we are. I got excited. I thought you said you wanted me. You don't want me. You just want my astrology knowledge. Ugh, I'm crushed.
I'm sorry, Rick. No, but it's you. It's your astrology knowledge. It's coming through you. That's the hot ticket right there.
No, I got it. And
Yeah.
thank you. And it's nice to be here and it's nice to see you. And I can't imagine what you and everyone else on the island is going through. I haven't been to Lahaina for years, but aside from anything and everything else, we were just talking before we went on the air about how Maui has turned into kind of like a Disneyland, and I said, yeah, and Lahaina is like Space Mountain. It's been the attraction aside from it being the PowerPoint and the indigenous magic point and so many other things. And yeah, and I can't even imagine. So
Mm,
aside from that, it's nice to see you, or
it's
maybe especially because of that, it's nice to see you.
I would say that feels really true. Yeah. And I was telling Rick before we went live that he said, how are you doing and how are things going? And I said, I feel like we're in the phase after the tragedy occurs where the adrenaline is gone and the reality is setting in. And like you said, I mean, Lahaina was very, in large part, the heart of this island. And to have it removed and all the ripple effects, it's a little bit overwhelming. But I'm also very grateful to be here with you, Rick, to be here with all of you. And this thanks for joining us. So before we dive into September, I need to tell you about a couple things that are great. First of all, we have a free gift for you. So if you are interested in joining Rick's harmonic aspect chart reading extravaganza, where he's going to be bringing the harmonic aspects to life with live demonstrations, you can get on the wait list now. And when you get on the wait list, you're also going to get a harmonic aspect like cheat sheet from us, where you're gonna get some more information about harmonic aspects, and it's a really cool gift. So check that out, and it's free. So if you go to astrologyhub.com, you slash extra three, astrologyhub.com slash extra three, you'll get on the wait list for that happening in November, and you'll get that gift. The other thing is, next week begins our Health, Wealth, and Fulfillment workshop series featuring Judith Hill, Georgia Stathis, and Michael Bryan. And in that, you're going to get some really specific and amazing chart reading techniques as well. So, Judith is going to be teaching the 12 zodiac signs in medical astrology, bodily rulerships, functions, and symptomatology. She's going to share details on body zones, assigned organs, strengths, potential health vulnerabilities, and metabolic types for each sign. So you're going to walk away with like really practical and applicable information from Judith's workshop. Michael Bryan's going to be talking about finding fulfillment in your chart. So he's traditional astrology. This is going to be a traditional astrology approach for discovering your unique path and living it to the fullest. And then Georgia is going to be talking about financial aspects. So decoding your chart for overcoming blocks to abundance. She's focusing a lot on Saturn and showing how those, your aspects and your how Saturn's showing up in your chart is creating blocks to abundance, but then also talking about planets, rulers, and aspects that impact your prosperity. You can get all three of those workshops for the price of two. Or if you're just like, oh, I just want that one, I just want Georgia or Michael or Judith, you can just sign up for one. And we do have payment plan options available. So you can go to astrologyhub.com/workshop. Check that out. Judith's workshop starts next week.
What a trio.
I know, right? I mean, those are some like amazing, amazing astrologers, and I love them together too. I feel like they're just a great balance for each other.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And although you talked about the wait list for the harmonic chart reading extravaganza, you didn't say when that was going to be.
It's going
I
to be
don't think,
November.
and it's going to be in November. And for anyone who is frightened when they hear the word harmonic, there's nothing frightening about it. It's it. I've become I look at harmonic aspects like psychedelics, and I don't mean the intensity of doing some substance like that. Not that I've ever done any of that. Um, but but the word psychedelic means mind expanding, and harmonic aspects are not a jump into a different type of astrology. They're simply a way of using aspects to see the hum, the music, the magic of the chart that sometimes when we look at traditional aspects, we can easily miss. So don't be scared by the word harmonic.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So again, free gift at astrologyhub.com/extra3. And then I guess I should call it an extra gift so you can remember.
For the harmonics workshop, should we just give everyone a harmonica?
I think so. Yeah. We'll be mailing out harmonicas. That sounds easy, fun.
We could just email them.
How about we email them a video of you playing the harmonica that they could just play?
We could do that.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Okay. All right.
Deal.
So, Rick, let's talk about September.
Okay.
I'd love to hear your perspective. It feels to me, and I don't know if this is just me, but it feels like things are ramping up towards something. And again, I'm getting like 2020, 2021 vibes coming back in. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of it.
Yeah. Okay. First of all, true confession, and that is that I do a monthly forecast 3 times every month. I do one on Astrology Hub here with you, perhaps my favorite one because I get to hang out with you.
Oh.
I do my solo one on YouTube. And then I do a live one at the local coffee house here, which is actually on Friday night, September 1st, because that's Friday. It's the first Friday of every month, and that's at Soul Food Coffee House here in Redmond, Washington. So normally, the one that I do for Astrology Hub is the third one. This month, it's the first one.
Wow.
And by the time I do the third one, I really have the feeling down. I mean, I've looked at it. So true confession is you're getting me looking at the month with a pair of virgin eyes, so to speak, because I haven't really dug in the amount that I normally do. But my initial look at it won't change because I mean, I've looked at it and I got a sense of what it is that I think will deepen over the next week as I do this 2 more times. But it's intriguing because last month we called that a betwixt and between. In other words, there was changes. Something was happening, and I said it was a month that was going to be chock full of events, but they weren't going to take us where we expected them to take us, but they were going to. But it was, and so we would be neither in the old territory, nor would we be in the new territory. We would be betwixt and between, an old weird saying that really just means between and between on some level. And as I dug into September, it's almost like there is a change And the change in the air is that the inner planets that were retrograde or were turning retrograde in August, in particular, Venus being retrograde and Mercury turning retrograde, both of them turn direct. And that means that the things are moving forward again. However, they're moving direct through the same area in which they had retrograded, which what we astrologers call retrograde. And Gemini Brett, I think he coined this word, and I love it, and I give him credit for it, even if he didn't coin it. But instead of calling that area of that shadow where Mercury go or any planet goes direct, then retrograde, then direct, we astrologers call that the shadow, because it's that area in which events that occur are not finished until the planet goes back over those points and then goes forward over them again. Brett calls them, Brett calls the shadow, he calls it retrograde. And I love that word. It's a great word, retrograde. Um, but even though Mercury and Venus are moving forward, they are still moving through the shadow. Mercury leaves its shadow. Let me just think. It leaves its shadow on September 29th. And Venus leaves its shadow not until October 7th. And so most of the month, even though there's going to be things kind of teasing us as if things are moving forward again, they're not moving forward into new territory. They're moving forward through territory that we've already been through, first on the direct, then on the retrograde, and now it's the third and final time. And so I do think we're going to find some resolution on things in September, but we're not going to be really moving into new territory. And of course, on top of that, we have Uranus having just turned retrograde, and Jupiter, which turns retrograde on September 4th, which means that most of September, even though Venus and Mercury are turning direct, and Venus turns direct on September 3rd, and Mercury turns direct on September 15th. So we're getting that interplanet forward feeling or tease, maybe. But aside from Venus and Mercury turning direct, Mars, of course, is already moving direct and is moving fast. It's not slowing down. But we have Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron all turning or all retrograde, with Jupiter just joining the club, turning retrograde on the 4th, which means that even in the first few days of September, Jupiter is barely moving at all. In fact, on September 1st, Jupiter is at 15.5 degrees, actually 15 degrees and 34 minutes of Taurus, and it turns retrograde at 15 degrees and 34 minutes of Taurus. So it's like for 4 days, Jupiter isn't moving, and then it begins to go backwards, or to look like it goes backwards. So I don't see a lot of ground being made in the month of September. And because of that, it may feel, even though we're teased by the Mercury and Venus moving forward, it may feel like we're not making the progress we want to make. And I think that that feeling is going to be with us through September, even into October, although I think we'll get some shift a little bit in October, but it's really not going to be until the outer planets all turn or all move from retrograde to direct, beginning early next year. Jupiter turns direct on December 30th, and And Saturn turns direct at the beginning of November, so we're going to be getting a little push, but it's not going to move very much. And Neptune is turning direct at the beginning of December, but it's barely going to move forward. Pluto's turns direct in October, so we're getting teases and beginnings of it in October, but it's really going to take some time for these slow-moving outer planets to gain speed and to really begin to move forward, move through their shadow, and then push into new territory next year in January, February, March. So that's kind of the broad stroke of how I look at September. And I know everybody wants September. It's back to school. Everything changes. Let's get going. Let's get through all this. Let's get resolution here. Let's figure out what's really going on in our personal realm, relationship realm, political realm. Certainly what a crazy show going on there. In the economic realm, there's a lot of fear. But I don't see astrologically a lot of resolution, although just one quick thing, and that is that just like often we have a crazy, crazy work week and we're so busy. And then Saturday, we feel like we can finally have a day to relax and we get sick.
Yeah.
And it's all and there's an astrological similarity that I've noticed, and that is when there isn't big shit going down, sometimes we catch up almost like the lag of seasons where something didn't happen, or it's sometimes things fall through, or I don't say fall through. It's like the other shoe dropping where it didn't have a chance to last month because we were so overwhelmed by this and that and the other thing and the other thing. So we may see some of that in September. It's just a thought, not based on any astrological concept, more based on an observation.
I literally said it yesterday. I feel like I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop. Rick, are you hearing? I mean, the COVID stuff. It seems like it's kind of making a comeback. There, I got a letter from the kids' school. It seems like it's brewing again. Can you
Do
see that?
you remember what I said back in March and April of 2020? And I said, this is I'm not getting involved in the where COVID started or what it is or
Right,
if it is whatever. But
right.
I said that the pandemic is a pandemic of fear. COVID is just the symptom.
Okay.
And yes, there's fear out there, but it's not about COVID. I'm sorry. I mean, and again, I'm saying this 50% as an astrologer, looking at the patterns that were set up and looking at the absence of those patterns in September and October. And I'm also just saying it as an astute observer of human culture, civilization, and everything that I've seen. I think that there may be an overreaction, and that's a different issue than than COVID coming
Okay.
back. And
But
and again, I'm not a real doctor, and I've never played one on TV. Just
okay.
to be clear.
So you're saying, and if we can keep it like astrological from this perspective, you're
Yeah,
not seeing anything in the astrology that makes it seem like we might need to be. Okay, what I'm saying is I'm seeing a resurgence of the reaction to COVID.
yeah,
So we're going to start testing again. We're going to start social distancing. We're going to start, anyone that has any remote symptom needs to mask or stay home, blah, blah, blah. That's what I'm talking about. Do you see that astrologically? Is there any reason why a signature of fear and ramping up of fear would be prevalent, and or
yeah.
that
Just that Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron are all retrograde.
okay.
I think that I think that there is it's again, to use the tide imagery. There's definitely an undertow from the retrogrades, but I don't see it as being the main rhythm.
Hmm.
And again, I may be totally wrong, but that's what I see astrologically.
Mm.
Excuse me.
And anything with Eris, because I've heard, but then I've heard other things that the name of the variant is Eris, and then I was talking to Andrea Michelle, and she was, or Adam Summer, and they were tracking where Eris is coming towards the north node. And I was like, wow, that's kind of uncanny.
Yeah, and again, interesting. And it's actually the north node coming toward Eris, to be technically correct, because it's the north node moving faster than Eris. Um, that is all true, but it was Eris Pluto square that was so profound and powerful, and I don't see this on that same level. Again, if there's a throwback and yeah. I wouldn't argue with someone else's perceptions of the future based on the predictions based on their astrology. I always remember what Niels Bohr, the discoverer, inventor of quantum physics, said. He said, "Prediction is really difficult, especially when it's about the future."
Mm.
Don't
Profound.
know.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's very true. Okay. Well, interesting. So you're not, oh, that's, I mean, that's good. That I would rather not see it coming if that's,
Yeah, and again, it's easy for people to overreact when fear is rampant, and fear does increase when one feels frustrated because the resolutions to whatever one's problems are may not be arriving on the time schedule that one wants. And therefore, if there is fear, that can be used by the powers that be, or by anyone to instill more or to raise the level of fear. And look, this is the background energy of where we live. I mean, even going back to pre-COVID, in some level, going back to maybe history, but certainly during the Cold War in the late 60s, certainly during the 9/11 2001 period. I mean, when events happen, we react in fear. And again, fear is an important thing because it motivates us, hopefully, to protect ourselves. But sometimes with the instantaneous electronic digital media feedback social media system that we have, every time there's a hurricane or a fire, it's the worst one ever. So that when the worst one does happen, it's like proof that all the others could happen again, you know, and it's like we live in a world of extremes right now, and little there's very little support for finding what the Hindus called the Buddhists they called the middle path. And the middle path is a path between extremes, and we live in a world where on any issue we pick, people immediately bifurcate and go to one extreme or another, and that, I think, stimulates the response that we may have, to something, like this, next round of, COVID 3.0 or 4.0 or whatever we're going to call it. Um, I don't know. I can't, yeah, it's a difficult topic because people have such strong buttons on it, and everyone who has had their own personal experience of COVID knows that that's the truth, even if it's diametrically opposed to someone else's experience of COVID, who has an exact opposite action reaction, but they know that's the truth. And what we're finding out, and again, what I said back in March, April, May of 2020 with you again and again and again, is that anyone who knows doesn't, period. And I still feel the same way. And I don't know. I don't know.
hmm.
Don't ask me, ask someone who knows, but
Well,
but know that they don't.
the other thing you guys have said, I'm thinking about sort of the collective voice from the astrologers that I get to talk to, is that we're not done yet. that whatever was set in motion in 2020, 2021, it's not over. So that, I mean, I don't know about all of you, but I started to feel like we're kind of through it. Like it was starting to feel like, we're sort of in a different place,
Yeah,
but
but Amanda, what was set in motion in 2020 was not COVID.
right.
It was the bifurcation of reality where
Mhm.
people can look at the exact same event. The Black Lives Matter, the whatever the event is, and the George Floyd scenario, and two people can look at that event and see totally different realities. We're seeing that on the political spectrum, and we're not done with that at all. We're
Right.
not done with that. It's, I believe, going to take until the Uranus Pluto trine, which we're getting little waves of right now, with Uranus, at 22, 23 degrees of Taurus, and Pluto back to 28 degrees of Capricorn. They're technically trine with a 6-degree orb, but their exact trine isn't exact until 26, 27, 28. And during that period of time, we may finally move through something with a resolution to some of these bifurcations. And I don't think anyone's going to be happy with the resolutions, because there are 20 different or 50 different issues, or maybe 5 or 10 main issues of which reality is split on. And even if they are resolved, you're going to be satisfied on issues 1, 3, 5, 7, and 9. And I'm going to be satisfied on issues 2, 4, 6, 8, and 10. And no one's going to be happy, but there is going to be some settling, I believe, as we move through the latter 2020s. But I don't think we're there yet. And again, I don't think it's just about COVID. I mean, if you want to look at issues, it's about economics, and it's about progressive versus conservative. It's about, gun control versus First Amendment, or Second Amendment rights. In this country, it's about economic realities. It's about not, it's, and again, it's not just COVID, it's about medical autonomy, because even with that issue, it's crazy, because that issue in some way is the same issue as the abortion issue. And I'm not going political here. I know I'm avoiding the conclusions of any of these, but but whether you're preventing people from presenting alternative views about medical reality, whether it's COVID or vaccinations or whatever, or abortion, there still have to do with, does the government have the right to manage my body? Where does the individual infringe upon the society? And this goes back to what was set up in the Saturn Uranus square back in 21, 22, where Saturn is the go back and hold it together and be conservative and cautious, and maintain the status quo. And the Uranus is, no, we got to push through it and move into the future. And there's no way, resistance is futile. The future is coming toward us, whether we like it or not. And that's the world of conflict that we live in. And there is no one solution fits all. And I think that bringing this back to September and the astrology of September, is with Mercury and Venus both moving direct, I think we'll see little things that are bringing about the feeling like, yeah, maybe we can resolve this way or that way. But I don't think it's going to settle the deeper issues. And I don't think that COVID becomes the main player in this.
Mm. That bifurcation you're talking about, it's even happening here on Maui. Like there's people who see it this way, there's people who see it that way, and it happened really quick. It was like,
Yeah.
it hasn't even been that long since the fires happened, and it's already like you have two camps, or you know, it's very
And
fascinating.
there's no dialogue, because if you're in camp A and I'm in camp B, there's no amount of communication that's gonna change what your experience is and what you see and how you see it and what you believe in either direction. And that's the crazy thing. This is the power of the mind, and this is the danger of the times in which we've moved, where, and I've been kind of touting this story for several years now, that we are moving into a realm of the metaphysical world, and this was way before the company Facebook became Meta, and that is that physics has basically lost control to metaphysics. Now, this means something very important. It means that belief is no longer based upon what we used to call three-dimensional reality. And it also means that someone can change their mind that fast. And what that means is that there can be events, or an event, an asteroid hitting the planet. Well, that's a calamitous event. An intelligent species of ET landing and saying, "We've had enough of you idiots. We've decided there is no intelligent life on Earth. We're basically taking over." I mean, I don't know what the event is, but there's always room for that kind of event where all of a sudden we become lockstepped in the same reality, and all the other issues become less important. That's never far from the potential of happening.
Do you see that in the astrology at all, or is that just kind of your opinion?
I see that in the astrology, with Uranus and Pluto moving into trine, and again right now with Uranus just having stationed and turning retrograde, and the Sun having just moved through its trine to Uranus and now picking up on the trine to Pluto. I think that these are all important things, and I misspoke. The Sun actually moves through the trine to Uranus and Pluto in September. In fact, the Sun, and I think this is an important piece of September. The Sun now in Virgo, with Pluto at the very end of Capricorn, and Jupiter at mid Capricorn Earth, the Sun in Virgo Earth, and Uranus at 23, 24 degrees, retrograding back to 22 degrees of Taurus Earth, Jupiter at halfway through Taurus at 15 degrees of Taurus Earth, that as through September, Mercury, which actually at the end of August made a trine with Jupiter, and now it's retrograde. It doesn't pick up on the trine to Uranus, but the Sun, having moved into Virgo, reaches 15 degrees of Virgo, trining Jupiter, while Mercury retrogrades back into that trine to Jupiter. And Mercury's retrograde exact to Jupiter is on September 2nd, 3rd. So we're picking that up right now. These are practical grounding. Here's real potential solutions. But remember, Mercury's still retrograde. And then the Sun moving forward a degree a day makes its trine to Jupiter, as I just said, on September 7th. September 8th is when it's exact. But then the Sun continues to move forward, and it makes its trine to Uranus on September 15th. And then it continues to move forward, and before it moves into Libra, it moves into Libra on the first day of autumn, first day of fall, which is September 22nd, or the 23rd, depending upon where you are on the planet. But just before it does that, the Sun makes its trine to Pluto, and that occurs on September 20th. So what we have set up, that we had a taste of at the end of August, we have this grand Earth trine with the Sun making trines to Jupiter and Uranus and Taurus, and then Pluto in Capricorn. And then as Mercury turns direct, and Mercury turns direct on where's that date? Mercury turns direct on September 15th. As Mercury turns direct, it's going to do that right at the moment. Well, it's going to do that as it's um, trining Jupiter. And then as it turns direct, it will then catch up with the trine to Uranus that it didn't make just before it turned retrograde. And that occurs on the 30th of September. And then Mercury will make its trine to Pluto, but not until early October. And so what we're getting is this feeling like something is settling. Now, there's still a lot of other stuff going on that are, squares and oppositions and quincunxes that are still giving us a feeling of uneasiness. But I think we have some foreshadowing here that is actually aiming at these larger resolutions that will take still 4 or 5 years to unfold as Uranus continues to move forward into its trine to Pluto. And remember, prior to that, once Jupiter turns direct, we're going to get that Jupiter making its trine to Pluto. Jupiter will turn direct, and by early 2024, Jupiter is back at 9 degrees of Taurus. And by May, Jupiter will move from Taurus into Gemini, and it'll make a trine to Pluto in Gemini. And I know we just jumped way ahead, but I think that these are all foreshadowings of the solidity and the stability that is yet to come. And I just want to say one more time that just because there's stability doesn't mean it's going to be the stability that we want, meaning we, everyone, because some people will be pleased with the stability from some issues and not with the stability from other issues that will become stable, but in a way that may not be to your preference.
Okay. And okay, I want to ask you about Jupiter retrograde, because you said that in the beginning of September, we have Jupiter stationing and then going retrograde.
Yeah, Jupiter turns retrograde on the 4th, but it really is barely moving through the whole beginning of the month. Jupiter is pretty stationary. Technically, it's moving, tenths of a minute, but I mean it's for all practical purposes. Jupiter on September 1st, I think I already said, Jupiter was at 15 degrees 35 minutes, and it stays at 15 degrees 35 minutes all the way through 34 minutes all the way through the 6th or 7th. And it stays at 15 degrees um, all the way through to September 22nd. So it's not even moving a half a degree, even though it's technically retrograde. And when a planet is stationary, it holds more power, because it's like when Mercury stations, it becomes a moment like almost like Saturn, because it's barely moving. It holds the energy. I mean, the reason why the moon is technically a lightweight from transits is that it's always moving forward and our feelings are always changing. And I can feel like shit today and I can feel great in 2 hours, but in Jupiter, although it is traditionally a benefic, meaning that I call it the cosmic good guy, it's bigger, better, more. But, bigger, better, more is not good if you're dealing with cancer. And so everything in moderation, and Jupiter stationing, and even though it's retrograding this month, it's barely moving all month. And so where Jupiter is, it's holding its position. And in fact, because of that, the planets that aspect Jupiter this month will become more powerful. And Mercury makes a trine to Jupiter as it's stationing retrograde on the 4th. The sun, I already mentioned, trines Jupiter on the 8th. Venus squares Jupiter on the 16th. I'll come back and break these down in a moment. Mars quincunxes Jupiter on the 19th. The sun sesqui-squares, that's a square and a half, to Jupiter on the 22nd. And then Mercury makes its second trine to Jupiter in the month retrograde, because it made its first trine on September 4th while it was stationing. Now, as Mercury retrogrades back and then goes direct again, it makes its trine to Jupiter on September 25th. Now, what do all of these mean? Well, trines theoretically are good. Mercury trine Jupiter on the 4th, it basically is a magnifying lens on what? Jupiter, truth, justice, the American way. It's Jupiter. It's the Sagittarian energy of the high ideals. But remember that Mercury is also a bit of a trickster, especially when it's retrograde. And so this can also be the magnification of lies, of someone's truth that isn't our truth. And again, because it occurs on September 4th exactly, and again on September 25th, this becomes an important issue of the entire month. The sun's trine to Jupiter on the 8th. Again, this can be very powerful for the big picture, the trajectory of the archer's arrow heading off into the future. The sun's trine to Jupiter can certainly magnify all of that energy in a very practical way, because the sun is in practical Virgo. And remember, Mercury retrograding is in Virgo also. So we're looking for information that is useful and that is exact and that is precise. But the sun's trine to Jupiter can blow things out of proportion. Then when Venus squares Jupiter on the 16th, and again, remember, Jupiter's hardly moved. It's still, like within a degree of where it was at the beginning of the month, actually just barely over a half a degree away. And when Venus squares Jupiter, and this now is Venus direct squaring Jupiter, and it's basically, once again, it's magnifying those things we want or need. And remember, this Venus square Jupiter is interesting because Venus squared Jupiter back on August 22nd when it was retrograde. And now on the 16th, it squares it when it's direct. And Venus square Jupiter can be wonderful. I mean, Venus is pleasure. Venus is sweet. Venus is yummy. Venus is love. Venus is money. Jupiter is bigger, better, more. That means I could spend my credit card limit and then some, and not buy anything that's anything other than an indulgent feeling of the moment. We have to be careful about the good versus the positive versus the negative. But that Venus square Jupiter can certainly open our eyes and our heart to the potential of something that is good, as long as we don't get greedy, or as long as we don't allow ourselves to fall into a sense of over indulgence. Now, remember, with all these retrograde planets, whether it's Venus or Mercury, I mean, Mercury squared and Mercury trined Jupiter back on August 9th. And then retrograde, it trines Jupiter again on August 4th. I'm sorry, on September 4th. We just talked about that. And then when it goes direct, it trines Jupiter again on September 25th. We can look back and see what was going on August 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, when Mercury was trining Jupiter, and then look at what's going on now as September is opening, and September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, as retrograde Mercury is trining Jupiter again, to maybe get a sense of what we might get closure around when Mercury trines Jupiter the third and final time on September 25th. And so, and then we have the Mars quincunx to Jupiter on the 19th. And again, that's, that can be action that is, I mean, Jupiter and Mars are a fantastic combination, because Jupiter can basically pump Mars up with some positive energy. That's like for a sporting event, we want that Jupiter Mars energy because it's confidence. But a quincunx basically can be false confidence, or it can be the irritation of something being too much. Someone can act in a way that is overextended or over annoying or irritating, which sounds like an irritation. Yeah, but an irritation can be rather serious. I mean, if you got, poison oak, it's not like a little mosquito bite, or, Lyme disease. These are irritations. And so that Mars quincunx Jupiter on the 19th, and even the sun square and a half to Jupiter on the 22nd. Remember that the squares, the sesqui-square, the harmonic aspect, an eighth harmonic, because it's 3/8 of a circle. The semi-square, half square, and the sesqui-square are not weak squares. They're like squares that are laser focused with a sense of motivation. So we reached September 22nd, and we can be overamped as the sun sesqui-squares Jupiter to take action on something with a sense of confidence that maybe is based upon something false. So, yeah, Jupiter retrograde is important. The good news is it's in Taurus, and Jupiter in Taurus typically is going to take the common sense approach. I mean, these hard aspects to a stationary Jupiter in Aries, for example, or in Gemini might be way more overactive or reactive than they are with that Jupiter in Taurus, because Jupiter in Taurus wants to grow something methodically in a way that's going to get to where it's going.
Rick, are there other aspects that you want to focus on? I mean, we just went through a huge deep dive on.
Well, on Jupiter, and yeah, there are. I mean, again, there are some really sweet trines, through the month. Matter of fact, on September 22nd, when when we have what did I say on the 22nd just now? Hold on a second. Um, Oh, no, it was actually, on the well, we backed this up to, September 20th, when the sun is trining Pluto, is a very important day, because that ties together that whole thing of the sun that trined Uranus on the 15th. So this 15th to the 22nd, we're getting this grand Earth trine energy that is very stabilizing, even though in that same period of time we have other complexities, like the sun, as it's moving through latter degrees of Virgo, will oppose Neptune on the 19th. I mean, we could take this through chronologically, but what I'm trying to do with this is kind of juxtapose some of the biggest events, because none of these events are huge individually, like like at the end of July, when we had the sun oppose Pluto as they were both squaring the nodal axis. That was a huge event unto itself. Or like a Saturn Pluto conjunction, on the day that the COVID virus was announced on January 12th, 2020. Those are huge events of outer planets to slow moving things. We don't have anything on that level this month, because there's no aspects made from Jupiter to any of the slower moving planets, because Jupiter ain't moving all month, and there are no aspects between Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto. So that's the intriguing thing about September, is that when we look at these outer planets, ain't nothing happening. But when we look at the inner planets, there's some real agitation and excitement, and some real smoothing and stability at the same time. And so that's what makes September interesting and unique. It's almost like it feels like we're taking off and flying into the wild blue yonder, but we still don't know where we're going, because of the backwards drag on Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto, and Chiron.
All right, so we're flying off in new directions. We don't know exactly where we're going. And what would you say is the overarching theme? Like, what would you say that this month is about in general?
Well, I think this month we may end up being less frustrated than we were last month. I know this still isn't an overriding theme, but I think the frustration eases because it feels like we're being given solutions, whether we like them or not, or
Mhm.
resolutions, whether we like them or not. It's like a judge making an edict, at a trial. Obviously, and I'm not even referring to the political craziness that's going on. Just in general, you go to a trial and the judge makes a judgment. That's it. Whether you like it or not, it's resolved. Except you can appeal. you know, it
Mhm.
still doesn't take away the immediate resolution. And so rather than frustration, we can have anger if the resolution isn't what we want. I don't think it's that we're flying and we don't know where we're going. It's that we're flying and we think we know where we're going, but we're not getting there. And that's the frustration, but we're getting somewhere.
Mhm.
I know. I mean, I almost feel like I'm doing double talk because that's how the energy feels up there, out there, and I don't want to end this until we look at the two. There's two lunations this month. There's a Virgo new moon on the 14th that I think is quite stabilizing. And again, on the 14th, we do have Venus. Having just come through, it's still very closely square to Jupiter. And so there's that kind of overindulgence, excitement toward something sweet, something nice. But the sun and the moon joined up. That's a new moon at 21, almost just barely 22 degrees of Virgo, is trining Uranus at 22 degrees of Taurus. And both the moon and the sun over the hours and days ahead, the moon in hours and the sun in days, will then trine Pluto at 28 degrees of Capricorn. And so this new moon, although there's some hope and some excitement, um, is also, I think, has the power of some real setting the stage for some real resolution. And that resolution, though, I think is much longer term. But it's, because it is a new moon trine Uranus, but it's an earth sign. So there's some practicality to it. We also have the full moon, and the full moon on the 29th. I guess it can be on the 28th, I think, in Hawaii. It's at 2:57 a.m. On the 29th in Pacific time in Seattle. And that's an Aries full moon. And this is just after the vernal equinox in the northern hemisphere. So the sun has moved into Libra. We talked about that already. That's on the 22nd or 23rd, depending on where you are on the planet. But the full moon at 6 degrees of Aries to 6 degrees of Libra, the sun. Um, this is an interesting full moon that feels a bit benign. Both of these both of these lunations, the new moon, which has Venus square Jupiter, and the full moon, which has Venus square Uranus, still have some of that fixed angst, that Leo to Taurus square that we're still getting. But but at the full moon we have Mercury trining Uranus, and again, so we see the same theme again and again, even through the two lunations, where we have some stress and some ease, which means that someone's going to be happy and someone's not. So maybe this is you can't always get what you want, but you can get what you need month. Maybe this is there's a saying about something about um, what is it? Stuck in the middle. It's like we don't get the resolution that we want, but we get glimpses of it, and I think that creates hope. So maybe this, maybe this month the theme is, hope floats, or maybe it's the tyranny of hope, how we get tied to hoping something is going to be better in the future. Maybe those are themes.
Okay. So what I'm hearing is that there's sort of equal measures. I don't know if you'd say equal measures, but agitation and excitement, but also stability and resolution emerging.
Yeah.
That we have this tease of moving forward, but we're not really going into new territory. It's territory we've been in before.
But we're moving forward. But we're
Yeah.
moving forward in familiar territory.
Okay.
I
Moving.
know a lot of people love the idea of astrology giving them the answers.
Uh-huh.
And I know there are astrologers who can look at the same thing and jump to conclusions and make answers. And that's what some astrologers do, and that's what some people like, and I don't take anything away from them. But as I've said many times before, I'm not the answer astrologer, I'm the question astrologer, and I would rather focus on the potential for what we each can do. And I think that September has huge potential, and the potential lies in our ability to solidify what's real while also keeping an open mind. Again, once the sun moves into Libra, we're back to this whole dance of bifurcation, especially the Aries moon, the Aries full moon. That's, I feel this and you're that. There's that sense of the separation of how can both of us be right? Well, therefore, you must be wrong. And the only way we're going to move through this is finding little bits and spaces of common ground where we can both find places where we can create something where we can both be right and move forward on those issues, and understand that we can have different perspectives, but we can still be trying to move to the same place. And I think that we've gotten ourselves into a place, both globally, nationally, and even individually in relationships, where it's like one person has to be right and the other person has to be wrong. And I'm suggesting that with the energy of this moon, the full moon culminating, at the end of the month, that there's no room for right and wrong. We have to find ways and places where everyone can win something, rather than I win here and you lose, and you win there and I lose. That's maybe there are no winners if there are losers. Maybe
Mhm.
that's the theme of the month.
Okay, I like it. Two questions. You said September has huge potential. And the key is we that to solidify what's real. And you said something after that I missed.
To solidify what's real, maybe I never said it.
Oh,
I don't, to solidify what's real, but to also be open to the perspective of someone else's experience.
ah,
In other words, when someone says, this is the truth, that's harder to take if you say, no, this is the truth. But
mm,
if you say, my experience is this, and the other person says, well, my experience is that, that's a very different interaction.
right.
And that's what we need to, in some way, strive for, because that allows for dialogue, and dialogue allows for the creation of reality. Arguing about what truth is, which is, of course, Jupiter's downfall, because Jupiter can be overblown, especially when it's stationary. So we can have this sense of overblown truth, and that's the danger. That's the danger of September, is the belief that I'm right and therefore you're wrong.
Okay. Wow. Okay. The next question, and this comes from Help Me 100. And I don't know if this was a question, but I'm making it a question.
I thought you were going to say her name was Help Miranda.
No,
Help
Help Me
Miranda.
100. Okay. Is this a buildup for the eclipse season? Do you see any sort of tie-in between what's happening now and what's coming with eclipses?
Well, I think that I think that the eclipses will help bring some more instantaneous appearing resolution, and so yeah, everything is tied to everything. And there's a number of things as we push further through the year that I think give us maybe the tease of more resolutions.
Okay. Well, this is good. We haven't been talking about resolutions, Rick, for a long time. So I'm even like hearing it in the conversation is good because I haven't heard this in the conversation in a few years. So I think that's positive.
Yeah, well, and again, not to be Debbie Downer or to rain on your parade, resolution is going to be positive for about 53% or 47% of the population on any and every one single issue.
Yeah, I know. But there's something about resolution that it allows you to just
To
settle
go
into
on, to move
whatever
on.
reality is.
I'm sorry, I was too busy interrupting you. Say that again.
Just settle into what the reality is, and then you can move forward from there. But
Yeah,
as
that's
it's up
it.
in the air, it's hard to do that.
That's right. Whether it's my reality or not, if that is the reality, I now have to move on.
Right.
The judge says you have to pay this in child support. Well, that's not fair. Doesn't matter. That's the new reality, you
Right.
know? And
Exactly.
so, yeah, I think that we're going to begin to see some of that. And I think that September will bring some of that in. And I think we'll see more as the outer planets turn direct in October, November, December, and then begin to move out of their respective shadows next January, February, March, April into really new territory.
Okay, so this fall and into the end of the year is a lot. We're still in a lot of this retrograde energy. If a planet isn't retrograde, a lot of them are in the shadow of the retrograde. So we're kind of like going over and over certain points, and that really begins to shift in the new year.
I think so.
Yeah. Okay. Rick, thank you. I don't know about you all, but I feel like I definitely have a better picture of what's going on. I really needed the astrological perspective on some of the things that are swirling, at least in my reality. So thank you for that. Thanks to all of you in the chat. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a part of our community. If you want to get on the wait list for Rick's upcoming harmonic aspect chart reading extravaganza live, which is happening in November. You can do that right now. And when you do that, you also get a free gift from us. It's a cheat sheet taken from Rick's harmonics class. So kind of summarizing some of the harmonic aspects. That is available to you as a free gift at astrologyhub.com/extra3. Astrology Hub.
And if you've never worked with harmonics, it'll blow your mind. And if you have worked with, and I don't mean harmonics, I mean harmonic aspects. And if you have worked with harmonic aspects, here I'm talking like the quintiles and septiles and those guys. I call them the reptiles, turnstiles, kitchen tiles, infantiles, and so on. But if you have worked with them, you will see them in action with real people. We'll be doing the charts of real people live. We're probably going to do several per session rather than previously when we've only done, maybe 2 deep dives. We're going to do some rapid fire looking at these and seeing how alive they make a chart reading come. So it'll be fun.
It's going to be good. Make sure you get on the wait list. The wait list gets little special perks and you'll know when it's open first. So it's worth it. Plus, you get that free gift now. And if you're interested in joining us for Judith Hill, Georgia Stathis, and Michael Bryan, now is definitely the time to jump in. That they're covering health, wealth, and fulfillment, how to find those things in your astrological chart. 3 pretty legendary teachers all together for 3 weeks. If you can't make the live aspect of it, it's okay. Everything's recorded. You'll have lifetime access to it. And you can check that out at astrologyhub.com/workshop. Either join us for all 3 or just choose one. If you do join us for all 3, you get 3 for the price of 2. And in the month of September that's when the best pricing for this workshop series is gonna take place. So even if you can't consume all the content right now, it'd be good if you're interested to just lock in the pricing that is available right now. Again, it'll be in your online learning library, so you can access it later when you have more time or when it works for you. So hope to see you at that as well. And Rick, thank you so much. What an amazing overview. Looking forward to the next cosmic connection with you. And thanks all of you for being here. Take care, everyone. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you.